Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're going to continue with our budget review. And just for the record, Legislator Russo is joining us telephonically this evening.
There you go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll continue starting at an A114. Is that right? I'm sorry. Wait, we have to start back a little more. So, an education, community college, right? So anyway, from A 107 all the way up to 114. So the community college. The big issue here is that we're making our contribution, our annual increase to funding the community college, and also the increase on the chargeback that would take place to other people that's going to other parts of the state for school. In the area of public safety, which begins in 115. So we have issues with the sheriff, jail medical. Is there any change in the medical part of the jail medical, should I say?
Yeah, we've been approached by our jail medical provider, who we've generally been very happy with, that they're in the environment that we're in the environment. So they're looking to have some sort of expansion on frankly, their labor costs. It's very hard. It's hard to hire nurses. It's even harder to hire a nurse that's willing to work in a jail. So we sympathize with them, and they've been good. They work very well with our frontline staff. So we're negotiating and investigating any increases.
On 119, we have the Unified Communication Center, and in this particular area, you look to increase, as you said earlier, the salaries of the employees there currently right now, will be coming up next week, and also for next year, due to issues of labor shortage and just being mandated to be there, right?
Correct.
The Office of the County Sheriff. Any new strategies for this year?
Yeah, quickly, unfortunately, the state came down with the Halt Act. Not unfortunate for those that are incarcerated, but basically, it's a mandate for prisoners in jails. It just becomes a lot harder to supervise folks who are either being violent towards their peers or towards guards. What we can do to retribute them while they're having these behaviors. Really not allowed to put people in quote isolation anymore. So administratively, it taxes our frontline COs and sergeants. We have enough of those folks to deal with it, but then every time there's a reportable case, a threat of violence, an act of violence, an inmate hit this person, or an attack on a guard, there's a lot of paperwork that gets generated, and it's all mandated through statewide corrections. So our current captains have just been deluged with this extra reporting. Each event, in turn, almost nearly is now a crime, when in the past it would happen procedurally, more administratively, as opposed to actually filing police reports, which is a good fit because the sheriff's department, a sheriff can come down and just fill out a report. But there's just a lot more administrative time because inmates have a lot more rights. So in the jail budget itself, we're adding a third captain this year. We're also adding a second mechanic for the facility because, again, as we're going over capital later, our jail is truly almost one of our toughest structures as far as ongoing maintenance. So we've decided we needed that second maintenance person just for ongoing maintenance needs and preventative maintenance needs.
With regards to the Halt Act, I mean, I've heard nothing but terrible things about it from, from COs and sheriffs and everyone else. A lot of people reaching out to me about this. Is there anything that we could do to help them? Like, is there anything that, because I really feel like something needs to be done to help out these COs, and
Yeah, I mean,
they're getting attacked on a much more regular basis, and it seems like there's no repercussions for
sure.
doing so.
I think, obviously some of the incidents that happened down in New York City, some unfortunate deaths that have happened, people just being left in jails, and, we've pivoted to, what is bail reform, these days, and whether we like it or not. It's kind of the law of the land. And that's where a lot of our corrections officers lies, that they're just forced administratively to deal with these issues. So really, on that end, there's really not too much we can do. We can only just support the administrative side and ensuring that our people that work at our jail aren't doing the wrong thing, meaning following through with investigation, following through with mandated reporting. And then, there is a push on the fact that, 10 years ago, there were less inmates next door at our jail. Now those folks, we don't have as many folks in there, but the people that are left behind are certainly the violent ones. You know what I'm saying? So the folks that are still, that reach the level of incarceration, that are still in our jail, are still violent. So the pressure of staffing is still remain consistent, which is hard. So those are the things that we're capacitated to deal with now, and so that's the reason for the extra captain, extra reason for the physical structure to be safe, adding the extra mechanic. Yep. While we're on the sheriff, in his office of his civil office, the jail itself is accredited, which is kind of a process that the sheriff goes through with the Statewide Sheriff Association to become an accredited facility. The sheriff has goals of accrediting road patrol and his civil office. The civil office primarily is our office where evictions take place, meaning after a court order happens and somebody needs to be removed from a rental property decided by a judge, it's our sheriff and the civil office that actually performs the evictions. There are a lot of rules to it. Folks have a lot of chances to not be evicted, but at times the required processes happened, and it's actually the county sheriff that goes out. And part of that accreditation process, in looking at other peer Albany County, Saratoga County, Rensselaer County, how they run their evictions office, a lot of times in the past, and this is certainly pre-COVID, there might be a single officer going out and doing this process. And certainly you can background check. Certainly you can get a feel for people before you're putting an officer out there. But it's obviously a very emotional act to evict somebody from their apartment. So we've been doing more tandems. It wasn't too long ago we had somebody commit suicide in an actual eviction. Just not too long ago, the whole drug lab incident in Schenectady was an eviction process where they just walked in, they saw what was going on, immediately walked out and called hazmat. So our evictions unit is busy. We all know the crisis in courts and the crisis of housing, and there's just a huge backlog. So the decision is to hire a sergeant for accreditation purposes, hire another officer to get through all these evictions, and they'll be able to do multiple things. Once we can clear these evictions in the civil office, to help out with road patrol, or obviously help out with other mass events where when we need every sheriff that we need, that they're there at our ready.
On page 135 is the Office of Probation. And I think this year they've been doing quite a lot of work in terms of the amount of clients that they have to deal with.
Yeah, the number of people on probation is certainly rising. We're still staffed at an appropriate level, so we don't have to add people. But I got talking about the bracelets for the folks that are targeted by courts for gun violence, very in the same position that are sex offenders. So there's a lot more tracking of these folks that's going on. It's being monitored by our probation department. The necessary training to be a probation officer has increased. They are peace officers, and it used to be 80 hours, I believe. It's in 2023. It's going to be 135, I believe. So it just takes more time to get a person up and running to be a probation officer. And again, our junior, we have adult probation and we have juvenile probation. In our juvenile probation, it's amazing in probation. We have a lot of master's degree level people. We have really just a wonderful cadre of people that are trained to do train the trainers. So we do a lot of, in years past, we've done cross training for librarians, in Bridges Out of Poverty, something that's very common trainings for DSS to do. Our probation officers can do that out in the community. We've done that training for SCAP. It's kind of a community service that we offer in our probation officers because of the environment they work in. Many of them have these Excel trainings for the train-the-trainer situation. So we've certainly extended that benefit to the city school district, to SCAP, and we're always kind of open and ready for that community training. Yeah, so that unfortunately, because of COVID, they shut down the Regional Youth Justice Team. We've had many of our lawyers be very involved in that. It's just basically where you're giving high school kids and kids first in college that opportunity to practice trials, and it's really fun. Mike Godlewski, John Lockwood, when he worked here, many of our attorneys through our county attorney's office volunteered their time, and it was a really kind of a good stepping stone learning place for people who might want to be lawyers and practice trials and those kind of things. They've basically shut down because of COVID, and they basically just haven't gotten it back together again. So, if at some point they get it back together, certainly I'll probably come back to this body for budgeting, but there's no tentative 2023.
Page 145 deals with the county jail. Pages 149 deals with within the Office of the Sheriff is the Targeted Street Crime Unit. And in 151 is dealing with alternatives to incarceration and the drug court. Stop DWI is on 154. Which is all pretty much driven by almost fines. And the County Office of Emergency Management, which is on 156.
Our auxiliary police force is housed out of emergency management, and we have just 50 citizens that volunteer their time for traffic events, large mass events. Any police officers or policing agencies in the county are always very thankful that they're willing there to volunteer their time on this really wonderful thing under the supervision of Mark LaViolette out in Emergency Management Office. There's really no other upstate community that has a volunteer police force like Schenectady County does.
Department of Public Health, which begins on 164. And I believe we're also purchasing something new for them this year, the mobile.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in capital a little bit. Some of our ELC's money is about keeping schools open from a public health perspective, testing, tracing, isolating, whatever the needs are. Many public health departments across the state have what they call these mobile intervention units. So it's just an easier, fast way to either get to schools or get to wherever else you might need to go within the county. It'll basically be a large van, a forerunner. And nicely too, we're starting to do some non-COVID related public health things. We're doing an active flu clinic for our staff. We finally had an allotment of monkeypox vaccine, so we're able to offer that. We're doing surveillance on the polio stuff, just like they do down in New York City. Wastewater out of the city of Schenectady gets sent over to Wadsworth for that level of surveillance. Just this week, we're assisting the city school district and SICM and Ellis is partnering with a vaccine clinic for kids, not COVID vaccines, but just normal vaccines that kids need to be able to go to school. So these are kind of the exciting, everyday, normal, non-COVID things that our public health office is getting back to. It's pretty much I don't know, because it's the sewer operators amongst the county, so it'd be the village and Glenville and the city, and it's a relationship between that municipality and Wadsworth. So it's literally a bucket, gets scooped, gets packaged and mailed, and
And we also received some additional lead money, is that this year?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Lead. For
So something
lead
interesting
testing.
happened in lead. So there was a combination of two grant. There was two grant funding streams from the state, and they combined them. So you'll see in a couple different places where it looks like lead money was zeroed out. It's just the two became one, and it's still stable. We have a lot of lead activity outreach in this county, whether it's through Cornell Cooperative Extension, helping the city with their lead outreach to landlords, testing of children age 0 to 5 in case they have any lead-based issues, which is done by blood tests, which is run through public health. But there's that medical piece, that medical side to get the family to either our clinic or to Ellis or to a doctor. That happens all the time.
It's good to see we're getting back to a little more robust public health that isn't totally focused
Yeah.
on one virus and one mutation.
It is
that's
nice.
good.
It's nice to talk to environmental health, about restaurant inspections. It's nice to talk to environmental health about our our very well-known vaccine clinic for ferrets, you know?
Right, but at the same time, we can't lose sight of the
Yeah.
fact that it's not gone, and
Correct.
it could come back.
Correct.
We need to be ready.
Standing ready, I believe. I said we are standing ready down at St. Clair's every day, Monday through Friday.
I believe that was the exact term you used, yes, sir.
Yes, Ms. Pratt.
On that note, I'm noticing on page A187, there's a line under historical account information, pandemic prep and response. Has that been moved elsewhere, or was that more of a one-time situation? Just wondering what kind of funding we have for, potential pandemic.
It's interesting, the pandemic response, some of that funding came from this body, because it was that emergency moment when this body first gave me $1.5 million to deal with it, because we had no idea what kind of state and federal revenues were coming in. So this is a reflection of those accounts. And certainly some of the COVID funding that's coming to us, they're just starting to normalize a little bit more. I think the last large COVID-related grant that we received was the ELC, about the funding for schools. And we're stretching that grant, frankly, by not only letting people affected by going to school use our clinic at St. Clair's, but that literally anybody can. And in years to come, it's really normalized across the state. I mean, the state has gone so far as increasing all our revenue lines in public health. If you had a partial public health office, they really encourage you to become full-time, like Saratoga County.
Okay, page 190.
This is sort of a more general question. One of the issues we faced in the early COVID period was that nobody could get any PPE. It just wasn't available.
Sure.
What's our current supply, and have we given any thought to what we would do in the future if something were to happen?
Yeah. So we have a pretty healthy stockpile now. It was interesting when COVID first started, we had a stockpile, but it was maybe as large as your closet in your house. It was not a lot. We went through it pretty quick, and it was stored at Glendale. Probably the worst place to have it when you're trying to limit people coming into a building with communicable
Now, let me come over and get some PPE here at the place where we're...
Right.
Yeah, right.
Let me come over and breathe on everybody. So we relocated it over to the second floor of the library where it's currently now. I was actually just up there last weekend. We have gloves, masks, goggles. Like we are definitely prepared for the next one. But the interesting things about those storehouses is you have to rotate them, like because that stuff breaks down and that's not good. It's part of our emergency management planning now, frankly. Believe it or not, we had a plan for how to deal with a pandemic prior to COVID. It was a big, nice notebook the previous manager left me. Didn't use it because nobody knew what COVID was and how it was a different pandemic. But it just starts to fold into our regular emergency management planning. So it's right next to bioterrorism, right next to if something goes wrong, the nuclear facility in Niskayuna, if we have a flood.
It would just be good to know that we learned and we've adapted.
I think so. Yeah.
Nobody wants to go back there again. At least I don't.
Thank you. Page 196, we'll continue on public transportation and aviation, primarily the airport, and some highlights on the airport, please. We're building a new hangar at some point on the airport.
The airport, Paul Sheldon is our new Commissioner of Aviation. It's something typically that lands with the Director of Public Works. We have 6 very good, well-trained air traffic controllers out at our tower. We just received a very high rating. The National Guard goes through and rates the towers of where their military bases are. We just, this year, this body approved for me to sign the new 5-year contract out at the airport. On one of our pieces of capital, we're going to convert the purchase of the Hable Lane property into an expansion for the airport, just like we did before. Anytime you're making the perimeter larger, you have to start to mess with that fence, and the fence, there are certain standards for, yes, the fence goes up, but it also goes down 10 feet, so the animals can't get through with the big military aircrafts that are coming and going. So there's capital expense that we'll be reviewing later on it. But our relationships are good, we're doing, the 4 million into the taxiways, another 400,000 into an apron, once we get to the capital piece. So we are investing in that airport so that we maintain our relationship with both the Air National Guard, the Marine Corps contingent that's out there. And Mr. Gillen is working very hard to try and sell that land to other folks who might want to bring their small jets into Schenectady County. And we have that. We have Richmore Aviation. We have a couple more private hangars out there where people come, believe it or not, and park their jets. And of course, our aviation program at our community college.
I was going to say the college also
Yeah.
has a very valuable aviation program. The airport is just, my humble opinion, the airport is just important, and maintaining the airport is important, and improving the airport is important, because Congress isn't contemplating reductions in forces now, but unfortunately, we're on that list.
Yeah.
If there are base closures or reductions, and we have the only, there are two in New York State. There are ski-based aircraft, C-130s in Niagara Falls, and there are some here. And while we love the people in Niagara Falls, we want to keep our airplanes. So it's really in our best interest to keep the airport up. That's about 1,100 jobs that connect directly to the Air Guard, so it's important.
I would extend the invitation to anybody ever wants to go see the tower. I'd be more than happy to set that up. It's hard to realize how big that airport is in the middle of Glenville. It's a very large facility. When you're up on that tower and you can see out, it's very cool. We're doing a special events, I believe, November 12th, Run the Runway. I want to do it, just an opportunity to actually get on one of those runways and run a 5K. I mean, to me, that sounds really cool. So there are many public benefits for us keeping that airport. And that's why this legislative body is always geared towards doing the right thing for the Air National Guard folks. Absolutely.
Page 205 is the beginning of the social services area. It's a little over 25% of our budget. So are we beginning to see a caseload increase in our safety net area?
Yeah, so.
Result of the pandemic coming off, or declining, should I say?
Yeah, the Times just put out an article about longitudinally past 30 years, that family tax credit really was the best thing ever to try and remove people off these social welfare systems. So compared to those numbers, we're still doing well. It's how these programs are set up. There's a federal government piece and a state government piece. The temporary assistance funded by the federal government is 100%. So state-funded safety net, did I get that right? Yeah, 21% funded, and sometimes there's play there. Sometimes you can move people from safety net onto temporary assistance, or sometimes you can move people from temporary assistance on the safety net because there's a cost and a savings, and if you can apply that cost onto the federal government, so there's always a lot of interplay in the financial side of our Department of Social Services to keep those costs contained. But even in doing those things, even employing those strategies, even buying software to better queue our employees so that we're efficient in how we're categorizing these things, almost very similar to what we do at the nursing home about categorizing our MDS data sets, is the fact that some of these services just go up. Like, you heard your Commissioner of Social Services last night say that heating is going to go up. It's just we're going to be spending more money on that this winter season. Our special localized services for any kind of psychiatry or youth and family services or the pediatric 0 to 5 services, some of these services are just more expensive because there's just not enough providers out there. So some of these costs were hamstrung. It's very analogous to inflation. You know, some of these DSS costs, just there's not much control. When, you know, the DSS is, you know, 28% of your appropriation and 73% of your tax levy, you know, which is the $70 million that we go out to the public for, 73% of that is Medicaid and social services. You know, 73% of that. So it's a mandate that every county has to deal with. And you know, we do a good job. We have Paul Brady has years and years of experience being a social services commissioner, so much so that the state of New York depends on him to go to other counties to train new social services commissioners, and then having good people underneath him. You know, Brandy is why we elevated her to be in the Aurelia of 797, because you just need good people and good efficiencies when you're dealing with the increases in both numbers of people coming in and then the costs, you know.
The costs are the costs. On the access side of Medicaid, do we have particular areas where we have access problems where, yeah, we could pay for it, but there's no provider for it, or?
Are you talking about people filling out Medicaid applications?
No, I'm
or-
thinking more in terms of the behavioral health side, and I think also our in the dental area, I think we have some issues.
Yeah.
But I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm not able to quantify it. So
Yeah,
I'm hoping you-
community mental health is really hard right now. It's really hard. If anybody in this room knows anybody that has those services, seeing a psychiatrist, psychiatric nurse practitioner, a social work counselor for any kind of counseling, any, you know, bipolar, schizophrenia, or regular depression, or, you know, softer mental health issues, it is hard to find a provider. And Schenectady County is no different than any other place. We have something cooking to help improve that. I think that announcement is coming soon. I'm excited about it. I think this body will be excited about it once you hear about it, to try and expand access to community mental health in Schenectady County. So we're working on it. It's just not 100% baked, and I can't mention it.
It's almost a two-part challenge, because A, there aren't too many providers, and
Yeah.
B, the providers there aren't too inclined to take the reimbursement that Medicaid.
Not uncommon for an active schizophrenic case to have to wait 6 months to see a provider that can give you a pill to make you better. Well,
Right.
you tell me the downward effects of that. That's 6 months of a person that hopefully has a support system to help them. It's hard.
Just an issue I wanted to raise, that's all.
Yeah.
And the planned spending for two items, Code Blue and homelessness. If you can.
Yeah, so we submit every year a Code Blue plan. Paul Brady has a 3-meeting system of pre, in the middle of Code Blue, and post Code Blue. Our providers are back and ready to provide our sheltering services again this year. We've actually splintered off some Code Blue money this year for, in the past, our evening beeper people would try and shelter first. Hotel was always the last means of housing somebody who is homeless, just simply because it's simpler and easier, and there's a network at a shelter, whereas a hotel, at times, it just turns into party time, and it's harder to get that person in the morning to go to the required service, because again, remember, by law, we have to house people. It's not even just during the winter months. If anybody presents to social services and they tell us they're homeless, we have to house them. And there are so many steps in making that happen. But in Code Blue, in the cold season, we receive that extra state funding, and so that's where the plan is, and that's where Brady really corrals our homeless shelter providers. You know, we all saw the house across the street from Bethesda being built. That's not going to be online this winter, but that's going to be extra bed space capacity for our homeless folks. We still have that extra flex space that we're renting in the church across the street from Bethesda. And remember, Bethesda is the gold standard of homelessness housing, because not only are you housed, not only are you fed, not only are you given any kind of ADL needs that you need, clothing, toothbrush, hygiene products. You also have a nurse practitioner that gets in there very early in the morning and tries to triage, hey, what are you doing today? Are you going back to the park to drink? Are you, can we get you down to social services to begin some sort of plan of counseling and services? But specifically this year, we picked a couple of mental health provider and drug and alcohol providers, because the evening beeper, sometimes there'd be a rift between, well, this person should have a hotel room, this person should have a shelter bed. You know, we always slanted to not the hotel in the past, but that was our person on the other end of a phone making that assessment, where if we have somebody that's has a counselor, is on a program with a reputable community partnering agency, let's put the decision and the responsibility on them, whether they should be in a shelter or hotel room. So we're fronting some money for New Choices, a couple other behavioral folks in town, you know, because they're already on that counseling stream. And that's always the goal. Somebody presents and they're homeless. It's not about keeping them warm and fed at night. It's about making sure to link their services the next day. So if we have these folks that already have some sort of community agency that's following them, let's do that. Let's incentivize that. And our Code Blue Plan pays for it, which is completely 100% state funded. So that's a win. We're also doing a couple of other housing and homelessness initiatives. Last year we did YWCA, the Care House over at Bethesda, and we did one other. What was the one we did last year? Anyways, that was last year. This year, we are 2 feet into the SCAP development for their campus that they're proposing. So we have a $550,000 in this budget to go for that. We're certainly investing in BCNI. They're doing the Elmer Ave Gardens project, and then also our partners at the Salvation Army. Their residence, which is right around the corner. I walked through. We had a very frank conversation about making sure that the folks that are here, because it's right in downtown Schenectady, are truly Schenectady County residents and not out-of-county residents, because believe me, that stuff happens where other counties are shifting their homeless people to other counties. So we have a good agreement that we're going to truly limit those out-of-county folks at the Salvation Army, and we're going to do a couple of upfits for them, some HVAC repairs and some painting. It's a good building, it's got good bones, but it needs a little help, and so we're going to help.
I have a quick question about the Servet Service Agency. It says they requested about $178,000 and you recommended $150. I was just wondering what.
Sure, what page you on, sir?
205 and 206.
This is Veteran Services?
Yes. It's A65, it's in the
Yep.
middle.
What do we think? It's about a $25,000 or $27,000 discrepancy. Some of that might have been because the peer-to-peer money came in halfway through the year. And so for calendar year '22, it ran like 6 months in '22 and 6 months in '23. Currently, we have Bill Frank, who is our veterans, runs our veterans office. Jesus works down there. We actually have a job opening right now, our peer-to-peer counselor. I can get you that answer, though. There.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
Page A. 205, A205.
It's also at the bottom of 206.
Mr. Manager,
Yeah.
if I may.
Yeah.
Mr. Cuomo, that was associated roughly $27,000 with the rent. Formerly, the Veterans Department was located in 797 Broadway, which we subsequently bought. So there was no longer a rental cost associated with their allocation of space within that particular building.
243. Our next department is looking on page 249, which is the Department of Senior and Long-Term Care. Page 259 is, we begin to look at our parks and recs and youth area.
Of our wonderful new trailhead at our Indian Kill in Glenville. It was a large recreation initiative by County Soil and Water. Anytime we can, we're always looking to increase our preserve footprint.
And then on pages 271, again, is our tourism. And we know from the bed tax, it's still
Yeah.
growing, right?
Yeah, we do an analysis on the quarter. We are at historic highs for our first 2 quarters in 2022. Obviously, people are back and they're renting hotel rooms in Schenectady County. We've budgeted 1.2. We may be a little bit higher than that at the end of the year. Be glad to re-report that back to this body when it happens. But of course, our hotel bed sales tax revenue by statute has to go to an account specifically utilized for arts and entertainment and historical purposes. Traditionally, our SIP grant funds come out of there. That's where the county government extends grants to local musicians or plays or in very involved SIP grant review process by the county legislative staff. Our special events funds are taken out of that $1.2 million. Discover Schenectady is funded through that line. Also, our obligation to proctors by county law, $200,000 every year, is funded out of that line.
Pages 273 and on is looking at various departments, the Economic Development Department. Any questions on soil and water? Pages 293 and on looks at various types of the employee benefits, debt service that we pay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
am I correct in my recollection, as it only comes up about once a year when we look at the budget in this way, that the line A90, employee benefits, is not necessarily all our benefits, because some of them, I believe, are included in some of the other funds?
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to be sure.
Library fund.
Yeah, some
funds.
go there, some go in the D fund and different
D
places.
fund, the E fund.
All those funds, yeah. Okay, thank you.
So if you go to the second book, we pick up again with a little bit of Department of Public Works.
I want to publicly apologize to the majority leader of the legislature. I reported 203 county highway miles. I inverted a number. It's 230. It's 230. My mind wasn't as quick enough to adjust to that quick pointed question, sir. So it's actually 230 miles of county roads, sir.
And the only reason I was asking, with the record, were two. One was I wanted to provide some context around the 67 miles, I believe it is, of highway that we're going to recondition in one form or another, because I thought if you didn't know how many miles there were, then that looks like a lot. It actually is a significant.
Significant.
And the other one is because when we roll our snowplows, one trip is 411 miles. Whether it's a half an inch of snow or 10 inches of snow.
And the snow plowing, there's an extra 215 state miles that we plow as well.
There is that too.
Contract with the state.
There is that, and some in Princetown and some other places.
Yep, right on B5.
Right. Either way, it's a lot of miles.
My apologies, sir.
None required.
That's fine. I work for you. As you can see, some of the GASB ratings that I was mentioning yesterday, going back to 2012, our preventative miles of preventative maintenance. Historically, defective road claims, we really haven't had any since 2011. Resident work orders are down. I consider that very good. And then finally, our GASB road rating.
Yes.
Can you explain what resident work orders are?
Snowplow maybe bumps into your mailbox, and you call up and you complain. Could be really anything. And we, of course, go out and replace it.
Pages 43 begins the Glendale Nursing Home discussion.
We are, that's one of our last sectors. Maybe we should start referring it to the virus that shall not be named, is still very present every day. It is still our last masked facility. You no longer have to mask in congregate settings anymore. So in the jail, you don't have to mask. In our shelters, you don't have to mask anymore. But the minute you walk into the nursing home, you have to be masked. And there's still requirements for COVID throughout the building because of the pandemic. So when the pandemic hit, space became critical. And so we started to decrease the number of patients. For years, we were right at 199, we have 200 beds. Obviously, the more private pay folks we have in there, the better it is for our bottom line. And we were getting, we got close to 40% at one point, private pay, which is very impressive. Some very high-end retail nursing homes are 60%, frankly. But we are a public nursing home. We take who we take, meaning those in need, Schenectady County residents. So we're certainly, we're not at a third. It's closer to about, I believe the last number I read was like 22, 23%. But that's also just based on is there are just many times where we have to have less beds, less people in the beds, because we're still, when we have a positive on a unit, we still have to space out the unit so that our other residents are not either too close to the person or, you know, in the past 2 years, we've at times just put all those folks onto one unit. So unfortunately, we're still in the place where we need that flexibility.
So we're not at that 200.
No, we're in the high 180s. Yeah, high 180s, yep. We're certainly trying to pivot to, with our new nursing home administrator, Todd Sipnewski, it's no secret that private pay is the best, but then Medicare is second, certainly if you come in through Medicare rehab, which is your post-hip rehab or post-stroke rehab. And him coming in with his leadership, he's trying to refocus to go after those folks too. So we've converted one of our units to, quote, a rehab unit. We certainly have enough therapists and nurses to maintain it. It's also a quicker turnover because they're typically there 30, 60, or at most 90 days at that higher rate than just normal Medicare or Medicaid.
How's our, overall, how's our staffing versus the numbers of FTEs that are listed in the budget? What's our actual?
Yes, we're still down, you know. As I mentioned last night, you know, our staffing ratios for employees on the floor per patient, we're still very, very, very close to compliance. And again, no nursing home is really truly in full health department compliance with that. But we're still down about 20 CNAs, you know, about 10 LPNs, another 1 or 2 RNs. But that's been par for the course out there. So actually, since we did the weekend adjustment, we've had an improvement out there in bringing people in for sure. Because word got out, you know.
I guess that's where I was going with the other half of that question, is any of the activity that we've engaged in to try to bribe people to come to work for us, if you will, has any of it borne any fruit?
No,
Sounds as if it has.
you know, again, it's any hospital or nursing home seems to always be in a perpetual nursing recruitment, hiring, staffing crisis. But doing that differential, and again, the differential was just overnight and weekends, because those were our most stressed periods for paying people extra to come in and work. But it seems to be going well, despite the staff shortages that everybody has. And literally just earlier today, we got notification of the bonuses. So the state bonuses that are coming in through our Medicaid line that we had to apply for our people that work in our nursing homes. So we're going to be able to get that out by the end of the month to our employees. So
Like by the end of October?
Yep.
I'm sure that's being awaited by a lot of folks.
Yep. Yeah, we haven't publicly messaged that to my staff, and I'm sure my finance department had a collective eye roll when I just said that, but that's okay. So by the end of the month.
Goal, before Halloween.
Yes. Yeah. By statute, we have to get it out in 30 days, so,
Okay. Well, that'll be meaningful.
yeah, yes.
So we have no overtime budget?
I'm sorry?
This was probably more thinking out loud than anything, but starting around 11/19/02/02, we did something different with overtime? Since it looks like zeros? I'm on B55.
I think that's just a munis answer. John, is there a quick answer to that
Mr.
one?
Manager, if I may. Mr. Hughes, if you look on page B54, there's $750,000 allocated to overtime for hourly aides.
I see it.
Given the manner in which the reports were pulled, we weren't able to, at least for the printed document, distribute them amongst the unique titles, but $750,000 is available for the Glendale Nursing Home to use for 2023.
That's just how it's being reported, no problem. Just thought it was probably good that we were reporting it. Thank you.
We have some nice capital, not a lot this year out at Glendale, but a couple very needed improvements out there.
So page 66 begins with the discussion on the library.
This is an interesting budget year for the library. Again, the library budget comes completely out of the tax levy, so that's the money that we ask taxpayers or property owners to pay. It's about $7 million this year. You know, not having an executive director, we had very capable 2 assistant directors going through the budget process with the manager's office and finance this year. The library budget is up 13% this year. So I'll say that again, the library budget is up 13% this year. I'm going to address staffing in a couple of our branches, Woodlawn and one other flex full-time clerk. The $7 million doesn't even include the capital side, the $1.5 million that we need to fix the roof, multiple improvements to multiple of our branches, libraries again. But having Charity literally start last Thursday, you know, we went through the budget process of building the budget with one team and then executing it will be Charity in 2023. So, you know, my words to her the other day were, well, we're already going to start. Once you get in there and you plan and you evaluate and you see how we're running things, we're going to just start budget planning in May, you know, for the following year. And that's typically what happens in county government. But it's just interesting having just a brand new director at our library system.
Legislator Pratt has a question over here.
Hi. So I just have a few questions. Of course, as you mentioned, there's been a lot of changes with the library and the director position, and given all of those changes, I took the chance to just personally cross-check the budget that was adopted by the Library Board of Trustees. I noticed a few differences with the department requested.
Sure.
So library clerk, I do believe that there were 6 requested instead of 5 for the full-time library clerk position.
Just go to the exact line for me.
I'm not seeing a line. It's
Or
under
page.
Personnel Services, page 78, B78, library clerk. Right at the top. And the other difference was the graphic design artist. I know there was a request for a conversion from graphic design artist 1 to graphic design artist 2 with a slight salary increase. And I know that the library is incredibly grateful and very pleased with the 13% budget increase, but I was hoping you could speak to the decision-making process with some of the requests here, and perhaps just take a quick peek at, again, I'm not sure if this is accurate. I do think there were 6 library clerks requested, and then the graphic design artist conversion.
So if you look down to senior library clerk, so there was, I think that's where the clerk line can be answered. So there was an add to library clerk, and then there was an add to senior library clerk.
Okay.
And then similar to what we did with our support investigative workers, if we have a staff member that believes that they're working out of class, which is the situation you identified over at the library, there's a CSEA civil service process to kind of go through. And the hard part about the budget this year was, you know, Charity Charity Thorne, excuse me. Charity Thorne is our new director, so she's the one that's going to be implementing what's on these pages. So it was very hard to, once we received the budget from library staff to start implementing it, because at some point every office, every department in the county asks for things, and we can't give everybody everything. But this year we felt we gave much to the library at 13%, and including the capital. So there were a couple things that fell off. Some of the hourly rate, we didn't add that to the budget that was requested of us. And again, the rationale is, we have a new director in there. So there's going to be a new management theme in how we're organizing our people and where people are staffed and where people are located, whether they're doing programming, whether they're behind a reference desk, those types of activities. And then the second piece was the civil service thing. So through library management and our Department of Civil Service, we'll try and guide that. And there are some challenges coming up. I know the website needs to be redesigned out there. But hopefully, using the expertise of our IT staff, we'll be able to bridge both things, because, our library system is unique in the fact that they do things on their own at times, whether it's social media, a lot of interaction with the public, and certainly at times it's better if they're working with us as opposed to in parallel or not working with us. So a lot of these things in this budget reflects the hopes of what Charity's going to bring as management next year. And again, it's 13% outside of capital. So in my mind, that's a pretty good response to the asks for people that support our library.
Yeah, thank you. I know we're all looking forward to those big changes at the library and a fresh set of eyes and expertise. So thanks for clearing that up.
Just from an historical perspective, it's been a long time, if ever, in my history on this body that we've increased library funding by that amount.
Yeah.
Historically, it has been more the other way.
Yeah, and I couldn't find it either, but the one thing I will say is, we had our COVID year where, believe it or not, that year for the library system went up 3% when most of our departments were flat. But then the following year, last year, we tried to correct that by going up 12%. So really, truly, the other historical high was just last year. So we're on year 2 of historical highs for increasing this budget. And there are other things that I would like to see in here, more of the progressive maintenance costs that are typically within our other departments within their individual budgets. We just couldn't get to the point where we had enough of our evaluations of how much the window cleaning costs, progressive maintenance of carpets costs. So we couldn't fit it in this year, that we just ran out of time. But next year, we're going to have that pressure on this budget as well, too.
Page 88 speaks again to the debt service commitment that we have in this county, roughly $7 million.
That's the number of how much we're paying on past bonds for the past 20 years.
Remind me what our capacity would be if we decided to borrow everything we could borrow. Not that we would do that, but again, looking for some context on that 7.3.
Yeah, I mean, we, doing the capital we did last year, doing the capital we did this year, we are bonding a lot. We're ready for it, we're capacitated for it. We certainly can't continue at this rate that we have for the past 2 years, I believe. But those are outward year discussions. Total indebtedness is about 88 million, which is close to that 15, actually it's closer to 12% of what the Moody's bonding always looks at, and the goal is always to stay below 15% of bonding capacity. So the 12% where we're at currently doesn't fully account for what this body has passed last year and then coming into this year. But I'm also looking forward to the equalization rate, which is how much you can borrow is also based on a 5-year average of property values in that county. We all know what happened this year with property values exploding. So it's a 5-year average. So just like our payment in our retirement system, our equalization rate, it's not going to explode. But, in the first 6 months, it was $1 billion, that the property values alone went up in Schenectady County. in 2022. So once that equalization rate is figured, we will have more room to borrow. And frankly, why we're rated so high on Moody's bond rating is because when you look at other counties, surrounding counties, you know, Richard was asking about the Moody's designation, and I look back, and Albany County is like in capital A3. The only other close county is Saratoga County. We all know how affluent those folks are. So when you look at comparative governments, we still have reasonable room to borrow. We do. There was a Times article just today came across a computer about the federal government because rates are going up, because their indebtedness is so high that, you know, inflation may continue or things may be stagnant. I mean, think about it. We've had 15 years of 2, 3, 4% interest rates. That's terrific. That's historic. Are we going back to a place where it's 5, 6, 7? Maybe. And so we always have to accommodate that when we go out and actually sign on that dotted line for that continued borrowing going forward. And that's, you know, last night I talked about the cash capitalization piece. You know, we didn't go out and cash capitalize $10 million last year because we were able not to. So no more, when we bought the buildings, you know, boy, that rate was so cheap. It was, you hate to say free money, but it was good timing.
So page 96 and on looks at the various revenues that the county actually receives and or estimates of revenues that we anticipate to come in from every single department.
Yeah, so these are revenues all listed in other places, just aggregated together at the end of this book.
So the next segment is to look at the capital projects, which is the third book. And it's roughly $37 million of capital expenditures that we're looking to have this year that's being proposed throughout the various departments. And so with that, we'll start with the first department that's there. Which is on page 12.
So this is our previously funded new building, pre-engineered steel building out at Public Works. We're going to be utilizing for interior parking, basically for our snow plows and some of our other heavy equipment. Some of that space we lost with the records management expansion. So this funding is on top of last year's funding, which will finish the project. Completion date by the end of 2023.
I must confess that throughout this book, one of the improvements I see are a lot of pictures of various facilities, which is helpful for us to just put our minds around what we're doing here.
I was relentless with staff that this needs to be more lively. And I don't think we're done yet, frankly, but.
Oh, no, that's good. Every year we'll improve more.
The next project, you know, the jail addition at the roof, you know, we have 4 distinct different areas of the jail built at different times, different centuries, frankly. And so this jail addition roof is from 1991, 9,600 square feet. The roof is original to the build. It's time to replace it.
Next is Glendale Kitchen.
Yeah, so, you know, for years, our cooks who make our meals for our folks in our Glendale home, there is a heat problem in the summers, and it's so bad, sometimes people have to go home sick. We put in large fans. We do as much as we can to lower that temperature in there. It just simply wasn't designed to exchange air efficiently. So we're going to get in there, have a better air handling system in there with some auxiliary HVAC.
So any questions on the sheriff's office? It's just small improvements we're doing to various departments, the tanks, aviation, and the expenses will get bigger and bigger as you keep turning the pages.
The general aviation north ramp reconstruction, that one's important. That's the apron in front of ESAM. Again, you know, when you have rubble, when you have crumbling taxiway, and you're trying to bring a small jet through, which sucks in air, and you suck in one of these chunks of pavement, very bad.
And again, most of the airport stuff, the county share is usually relatively small. The feds
Minimal.
Feds are pretty generous
Yes,
on
yeah,
these projects.
yeah. Usually it's 5%. Usually the county kick is 5%.
Of course, the highway program is another $5.2 million.
The long taxiways, A&D, it's a $3.5 million project, and we only have to kick in $200,000. It's a win-win. And the aggregates, because we have to scoop up all the old pavement, we get to do things like set a pad over at our soil and water so that they can put their wood chips on it. Some of this stuff we'll give to local public works departments if they need to fix their grounds on their places. Some of this aggregate's going to go to a volunteer fire tower out in Glenville for a pad before they come through and build. So it's interesting how you can recycle this stuff as well too, because it's a lot. I mean, it's why you got to go run the runway, because it's amazing to see the airport from the inside of the fence.
We're making some improvements to the Glenville Branch Library for roof and sidewalk in 26, and various library improvements throughout.
The Glenville Library was the same date that they did the Woodlawn Library roof, and it's showing the same wear and tear, so that one's got to be done too.
And of course, we're getting the grinders.
Oh dear. We're purchasing 2 grinders, one for our jail, one for our public works. Our people that we have the 3 Cs on, care, custodies, and control at our building next door, our Schenectady County Jail. At times we'll shove anything they can get their hands on down the toilet. We found downstream full jump chutes, sneakers down at the county sewer department. Manually, by hand, somebody from maintenance has to go to this well and pick up this thing. It's disgusting. Steve Luciano literally couldn't believe that we've been functioning like this for years. So what we're doing is they have these grinders. There's one in Scotia at the park because people shove diapers down the toilet. It literally just grinds it so that it can pass it on down the system. But you got to dig a hole. You got to connect it to electric. It's a whole thing. But the city will thank us for this one.
The things I learn about infrastructure in this position are just amazing.
Karen B. Johnson library roof replacement. It's $1.5 million, but it just needs to be done. Anybody who's been on the administrative floor, the second floor of the library, the halls are just strewn with buckets. Our public health repository of those gloves that we were talking about early, there are many buckets up there, and it's just, it's time.
So next time we go outside across in Veterans Park, our fountain will be working better?
Yeah, so that fountain is sometimes the bane of our facility's existence because it needs a lot of upkeep and care. it's predated, you know, to when they started putting in some of those monuments across. So it's just a very old fountain. So the thinking is to either fix the fountain, or, you know, I wanted to engage this body in Office of Veterans Affairs. You know, public fountains aren't as out there as much. There's a lot of different water feature kind of memorial things you can do. You go to any college campus or any more modern kind of places like Veterans Parks, that the water feature is different. We certainly don't need our friends, whether they're squirrels or homeless folks in there bathing or those kind of things. So we might just totally relook at fixing that fountain, maybe doing something
Yeah, there are
completely
some
new.
nice, newer,
Yeah. Yeah, where it's just falling water, where it doesn't necessarily pool, but it
Doesn't require a
goes into a
large
drain.
body of water
Yeah.
at the bottom,
Yeah.
for obvious reasons.
Are we making some major improvements to the community college this year?
Yeah, we have another historic kind of round of community college fixes, you know, continued with such success with redoing the library. We're turning our attention to student activities and cafeteria. Their Elston Hall roof out there needs to be fixed. There are some ceiling lightings that needs to be fixed. Again, water seepage and just further damage to the building. One of their greenhouses for some of their natural science curriculum has basically been non-operational for years, so we're getting that back up and running. The Begley Hall building, which is basically where their maintenance is, there, believe it or not, there are two creeks that historically run through and under the community college to get to the river. I'm forgetting the name of the two creeks, but Cowhorn and Mill. One of them runs right underneath Proctor's. If you ever go to the basement of Proctor's, there's a creek that runs through there. It's pretty cool.
Cowhorn Creek runs under a good part of downtown as well.
Yes,
incidentally.
yes, yeah, back at
Quite
some
the
point
creek.
when they had the canal, right? Anyways, but that Begley building is just so low. Anytime there's a hard rain, you got a foot of water where you're trying to park your lawnmowers and your trucks. So we're putting some money into an engineering study to see what we can do to help move that water. Compendium, the city, also passed some money to look at, because there actually is a pump station down there. It's that circular building that's out in front of the community college off exit 4C. So the city has put in $50,000 to look at the electronics of it, because it's still a functioning pump house. It's just the electronics on it are literally from the 20s and 30s, and there's a foot of water in there, and no electrician in their right mind wants to go in there and try and turn it on in the foot of water. But we're going to, I apologize, the city is going to study it, so it's coming out of their budget. But we're excited for that too, because the proximity to the river, it's in an unfortunate low-lying area. But saying that, you know, we received earlier this year notification from Capital District Transit Committee where we received a federal award where we don't have to pay a nickel for a study to look at the off-ramp that comes off 4C in front of the college, makes your left into Scotia, Glenville, Burn Hills. And with that study, the pedestrian crossway from walking on the college campus to try and get across that, it's literally a 5-lane road, you know, between your shoulders and your median. It's terrible to walk across that intersection. I've done it many times, but there's potential. They looked at this in 2010 and they decided not to do it. They designed the intersection as they did, but we've kind of re-brought it back to the federal government to let's just go big. Let's move the off-ramp to behind the college. That way we can get that community of college students walkable into our park, into Stockade, into Lower State Street, effectively moving that off-ramp potentially behind the college, linking up with the rotary over by the river to get you over the bridge in that direction. But this is a large money study, and this is, you know, anytime you're talking about the federal highway system, this is complete federal funding. There's no county dollars toward this because it's just too expensive. Coming in and building ramps and bridges like that will be $15, $20 million. But is it worth it to the college? Yes. Is it worth it to the city and county of Schenectady? Yes. And it checks a lot of boxes. You know, in the 70s and 80s, all these municipalities were building highways through cities, breaking up neighborhoods. So it's not fair for the college to have to play leapfrog to get across the street to a store or to a restaurant. And certainly the sustainability of the riverbank. You know, if we can do something just like they did over by the casino, really strengthen that embankment, they did it in Scotia too, Imagine using all that aggregate and just putting it right to the riverbank to help stabilize the stockade, helping stabilize the Schenectady Community College. That one's exciting, and it could be transformational for the college itself. Again, we're all about attracting as many people as we can to that college so that our costs are lower, having more students in that building. That's always been the goal as long as I've been here and as many of you has been here.
I mean, not to belabor this, but it also opens up the entryway. The college natural growth pattern has to be to the east.
Yes.
And removing that ramp just gives you some tremendous opportunities to
Yeah, agreed.
open up, but it's just a study right now, we'll see.
Yes. $400,000 study, but federal government paid for.
There you go.
Are there any additional questions?
On page 52, this is a near and dear project to me out at our Glendale home. Some of our exhausts are vented out of our building at near ground level. So the idea there is to get them up to roof level. If you go around that corner, it's potentially an outdoor area for our staff, potentially anybody taking a walk or taking somebody on a wheelchair ride around the building. But that should really be extended to the roof line.
And one day we'll have more cameras installed, right?
Yeah, so we're continuing our commitment through our district attorney. It's another $305,000 for his camera system. We're certainly in talks to something that was promised years ago for extending that perimeter into Scotia. So we are working on it. It's noted that it's been a long time. And there's a unique technical problem. I believe we can get past it. It's just you got to figure out where your repeaters are between on top Ellison Hall, at some point on the bridge, and then where it's going to be received, maybe on top of jumping jacks. But it's not insurmountable. And not only is this capital funding available for it, some of Bob's discovery money that's come in that is resourcing police departments is available for camera use too. So we have the money to do it.
And are all of these from 73 to, oh dear, I can't see, 78? Are those just different locations?
Those are different years. So on page 67 is just some
I see.
future asks from the community college. 67, 68, 69, 70. Those are really out years. And then starting on page 7.1, we pivot from physical capital to equipment.
I mean the cameras, starting on page 73.
Yep.
That's the same thing.
It's the same request. It's Bob's commitment to not only extending the perimeter of the camera system, but we've had this camera system for so long, we're needing to rotate out some of our older systems. Because it's not just the camera itself, it's the software that's linked to it and making sure that it's all universal, that his special investigators can pull it easy. There's an incredible amount of time that it takes to geolocate the camera, to the crime, to pulling the evidence, to reviewing the evidence.
Well, I just want to thank you for your time and the staff's time and being here this evening and all the preparation that went into it and all the discussions that took place over the last few months. I know that we will return next Tuesday for a public hearing to hear what the public might have to say on the proposed budgets and also whatever changes that may come forward. And so until then, we will conclude. Thank you very much for being here this evening. Do you have a question, sir? Oh, certainly.
I was looking for, in our budget, the credits for our solar initiative. credits for our solar panels?
Yeah, so those necessarily wouldn't be in the budget. Those are linked to some of our bills. So that literally the national grid bills that come in, they'd be attached to those national grid bills.
Just curious to see what our payback has been on our solar initiative.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gone very well, and we extend a lot of those credits out to our partnering towns and cities. It's gone well, but I can work on that. I can get you some numbers.
Yeah, just curious about that. And then second question is, have we negotiated gas and electric supply?
Yeah. So luckily, a few years back, we were approached, Mr. Gardner and myself, we locked into a 5-year rate, which isn't up until 26, I believe. As part of that contract that we also did about the accessory costs. It was kind of an addition to that previous agreement that we did. But boy, if we go back and our energy consultant can give us those numbers too, like we have saved a lot of money. I mean, we locked in at a very opportune time. And it was something that we really hadn't done for years prior to that. So at the time, we felt we were taking a risk, but it has paid off.
I was in Connecticut the other day, and down in Waterbury, Connecticut, they're paying 17 cents
I believe it.
per kilowatt hour
Yeah.
to run
Yeah.
1,000 horsepower blowers to a wastewater treatment plant. So
Yeah.
it's going to be painful.
Yeah.
Thank you all.